Hello and welcome to another episode of My Story to the World. And on our live events earlier this year, we're very amazed and blessed to have Pamela speak, although the time was short because it was an event and many things. And I personally felt I missed out on some of the stories, but thankfully we have her here for a longer time and we can learn more and hear more of a beautiful story. So, Pamela, for those who missed the live broadcast, don't worry. She's going to start from the beginning, right, Pamela?
Sure, I can start. I can start from the beginning because I remember at that broadcast. I said, "Well, where is the beginning?" Anyway, I was thinking, does it begin with me? Because my story begins with my parents and my grandparents and my great grandparents, um, and even great great grandparents. Um, my great great grandparents came to Canada as refugees. And a lot of people, I think, look at their history of Canada and forget that all of us are from somewhere else. Unless we're with the First Peoples here in this part of Canada, unless we're Blackfoot, we came from somewhere else. Um, Sometimes by choice, but so many of us without having a choice as refugees because Canada was one of the few places we could go and be safe. So my great 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 grandfather came to Canada from Scotland when it was conquered by England, and England was trying to get rid of all of the Gaelic people one way or another. One way to get rid of them was to kill them. Better way, from our perspective, was to get loaded onto a ship and shipped off to Canada.
One is a Gaelic, sorry, but it was
So the Gaelic people are one of the Celtic nations, or actually half of the Celtic nations. Right now there are 6 or 7 branches of the Celtic languages that still have living communities. And the Gaelic ones are the people of Scotland. Now, most of Scotland now is English or Scots speaking. The Gaels have been pushed right out into the ocean, onto islands. Coming to Canada was because there was a risk of being pushed out into the ocean where there was no island. So it came. So the people of now the Hebrides or of Eastern Scotland or Ireland or the Isles of Man, those are the Gaelic speaking peoples. So they came to Nova Scotia. Um, Most of them landed on Cape Breton Island. But there's Gaelic communities in the Ottawa Valley, in Halifax, which we call Ballivor in Gaelic, the big city, and and on the North Shore throughout Nova Scotia, which means New Scotland, because there were so many Scottish people who were shipped off to Canada that way.
Nova Scotia, New Scotland. I just learned something.
So, so those were the days before birth control and large families. And if you were a younger son in one of those large families, there wasn't much land left in Nova Scotia for you to farm. So my great grandfather and his wife's brother came out to what was then Rupert's Land, a Athabasca territory, and they settled in a town called Lamont. Now, there's a Lamont in Scotland that's that kind of a touchstone in Gaelic history. So it may have been the name of the town that really appealed to them to settle there. And there were a number of Gaelic families that settled there. So my grandfather grew up in essentially a Gaelic community where his playmates spoke German or Ukrainian. And it wasn't until they all ended up in school together that they began speaking English as a normal activity. But then they've been there um, now for 4 generations here in Alberta. And Gaelic culture believes, similarly to what Blackfoot culture believes, that you don't own the land. rather you belong to the land. So I was showing you the flowers in my garden, and I showed you those beautiful bellflowers. And I said, we have to pull these up because they would take over. They're an invasive species. So there's plants that you plant from somewhere else, they're exotic, and they just grow and they stay where they're put and they integrate with the rest of the ecology. Like you said, this is a metaphor for life, that the bellflowers, because they're invasive and spread and move everything else out of the way, they have to be torn up. So when we come as strangers into this land, it's important to respect the culture that has been there for like 10,000 years, to find ways that you can fit in and build positively, not to erase who you are and pretend to be someone else, but to see where your strengths as a person and your strengths as someone who has inherited the stories and language and values from generations before can use those cultural assets to create an enhanced life for everybody. When I have the homestay students with the talking about, um, should I explain what I is? So, um, Canada has a few different programs for allowing visitors to come to Canada, often very young people. So, high school students might come to Canada to go to high school, to get the English skills that will help them succeed in international markets and also to experience a really unique and beautiful country. And they might stay for 3 years to below 3 years of high school. And the one lady from Vietnam who stayed with me for 2.5 years, and now she's going to state, but she's staying with student residents now to get, even more Canadian immersive experience. Um, but most homestay students come from old cultures that haven't had the force of immigration yet. So they're Kellen, for example, is Vietnamese, and her family has been in Vietnam for generations, and all of her friends are Vietnamese, and all of her relatives are Vietnamese. And then she comes here, and it's an eye-opening experience to see the Chinese cultural setting and how beautiful it is, and how that's a resource that Chinese recipients have gifted to the Canadian culture. And I have a friend whose grandfather came from Japan. Unfortunately, that meant the grandmother and Fred's mother were in Canada during the Second World War. So they were interned, and that's how they ended up here in Alberta, was through the internment. But every year they hold a Japanese festival, and everyone is welcome to come, and there's Japanese food, and there's beautiful arts and dancing and singing, and that's something their culture brings. And you know how many cultural festivals Calgary has. So for people who are visiting here in an old country, often that's an experience that couldn't have been known to happen, is to be able to see how every different culture working together for the common good creates something absolutely beautiful through the generosity of being willing to share who you are. But I suppose I should mention, for the purposes of keeping it real, that yes, we know there are people who are prejudiced against anything different. And we know that there are people to be really ugly and injected to things that come from away. And that's a nice old social to come from away. And in the Maritimes, that means someone who wasn't, whose grandparents weren't born in the Maritimes. And there's a lovely musical about 911. It creates something called Blaze with Lamb, rounded, and many of them were rounded in Newfoundland. Gander Air Force Base, which was an almost diseased airport. And the musical is called Come From Away. because they have these hundreds of people from all over the world landing in a teeny tiny town and spending a week or more there. Okay. We thought may have been on it. So that's also a beautiful way of showing culture meshes, but people are all the same. There are good people and bad people, but everyone is born with that ball-shaped space inside them and with the ability to look at other people, and if they can't see Christ in the other person, perhaps they can see themselves or their children and know that this person you're looking at could be my little brother or my little boy, and give them a love that it is in our nature to give. So when my students come and they stay for me, some for a week, some for a year, some for multiple years, I like to take them and show them all of the different cultural beauties that we have coming together because of that philosophy. I went to an interfaith breakfast earlier this year, digging in my pocket for my rose because I made this right after the breakfast. The Lieutenant Governor of Alberta who is also a refugee, was talking about, first of all, how grateful she was to the people of England who allowed her to stay and attend university and pay her university costs after she was expelled from her home country. But also how appreciative she was of that cultural wealth. And she said many different religions use beads for counting their plates from meditating. And that Canadian culture is like different beads, different colors, different stones, but there is one common thread that runs through them all. And that common thread gives our ability to appreciate. So I came home and I made a rosary, many different colors of beads with a black thread running through it so you can see through the beads that one common thread. But some. Okay, so you said Scott.
Yes, I wanted to say, you landed at the basket where you called it a border. Is it the same?
Yes, it's the same. So when my great grandfather came here, it was 1896. And in 1896, Canada comprised the 4 original provinces. So Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. And then they asked British Columbia to join, and that's what they said, only if you build a railroad. They said, only if you build us some sort of transportation so we can get stuff from Eastern Canada and market our goods in Eastern Canada. And the Prime Minister said, okay, we'll build a railroad. So that's what we got. The Canadians and the railroad, the one extreme end of the country to the other. And the space, so British Columbia joined, Manitoba joined, Prince Edward Island joined, so small. It's such a weakness. Just kidding. But Saskatchewan and Alberta were still provinces yet. They called it Rupert. This whole vast territory, it says it is Yukon, Marcus territories, Nunavut, Alberta and Saskatchewan. That's Rupert. It was divided up into chunks, territories, like Athabasca, the Assiniboine. But it was still just Nunavut, wild territories between British Columbia and Manitoba. They might be. And then it became a province in my case. So that's what it became. So yeah, so Lamont is just northeast of Edmonton. And that's where they settled and they homesteaded. So they built a farm assigned to them by the old Canadian government. Raised totally in my head state where we're 7 chip. And one funny thing is I've been learning it because my grandfather did it after son and Mrs. Smith. So my father did. So I'm thinking, but now I'm learning it and getting pretty good. And Duolingo came along, and that was a big help. It made a lot of the simple language acquisition easier. But I was also teaching the English and people hearing even worse at it than I was. And one day a lady came for the said at the end of the class, she said, I read the biography on there, and I was intrigued by how similar it was to my Sanker's experience. And this might be a bit weird, but I wanted to show you a picture of that victim. And she was brown envelope, and she pulled it open, and I looked at it, and I said, well, that's my grandson, and Mrs. Great Uncle John. This is my grandfather. And she said, well, that's my grandmother, Mary Ann Morrison, and this is my grandfather and my great uncle Lemon. So we're second cousins. And we didn't know it until we started connection through our shared language. So that was neat. Well, that was really neat. So the values that the Gaelic people hold dear are family, like that, not following my husband and my children, family. Aunts and uncles, my cousins, homestay students that are attached to me, I've heard my cousin Marilyn's family, people who marry in, and people who are just accepted into this big move. They all count. They're all people who have claim on my love and care. And whom I appreciate and made me richer despite their existence. So there's that the value of connectedness and the value of being connected to the land. There's also people have roots. You use that metaphor, they to put down roots. But to put in roots means that we gain strength from being in the place and knowing where the place is, and a push up to find that place, the way to build it up to whatever. And the value of education, which doesn't necessarily mean a skill, but learning things. And so I argue this. But I also remember my grandfather showing me. Do you remember when we walked out of the house? I said, this is wild spinach. It was my grandfather's, which happened to recognize wild spinach and safe mushrooms and the bluebells to get the roots, which are nourishing. Yeah, so that knowing, that passing your knowledge along, he gave up that. So said that. Now we can skip a generation or two. But kind of that brings me back to who I am in this place. That I went to the University of Alberta this was Alberta because that's I'd like to decided roots would be yeah. And then I came to Calgary to work because people have to do the work and because you have to return value to value. So in the 1980s, late 1970s, students at university paid about 1/10 of the total cost of their education. And I kind of looked at the numbers since, and I think it's still largely the same. The government funding of a public university like the University of Calgary, if they do this until bigger, covers about 90% of that university's costs. And tuition fees covers the other 10%. So if governments of province and the nation were going to invest that much money in me, it makes sense that I should take the knowledge and learning and credentials that I can and use it with the purpose of profits on donation. And the best place I had a degree of electrical engineering to focus power systems. And this is also sort of my topic with the last time started that in the 1980s there were not a whole lot of women taking electrical engineering. There weren't a whole lot of women taking engineering, period. most of them were in Alberta. Were in mineral engineering or chemical engineering, basically the oil field related forms of engineering. And a fair number were in civil engineering, but mechanical and electrical kind of Kevin Jones. Particularly with this machine. Okay, so she's speaking how plants to stuff like that. And when I had spoken to the council, it said I want to make major electrical. He said, why is it? I remember when he said, no, I was like, oh my god, what is this saying? You know, this was the 20th century. And it was cast within the 20th century, but it wasn't even quite into the end game. Yes, and there was a note where the women were still largely expected to be teachers, nurses, nurses, secretaries, and some of the. And it was also a lot where the evil rights and that and stage women's land was being associated with raw burning, which actually never happened, but it was a good way to minimize the movement. And I was feisty, though. I wasn't going to be put in my place by anyone, which is not again, it's really within us. And later, I read Dorothy Sayers' a monograph, like short writing she'd done analyzing something the path of the surf's fast, which was what she led in the University of Ghana to say, I want to study philosophy. And the person she was speaking to said, why would you want to do that? And she had gone away and thought about it and written this monograph. And basically what she said was, I don't know why anyone would want to study philosophy, but silly person that I am, I do. And no one should be able to put that barrier in front of you. I don't know what, well, one's entirely during the Cold War. And there's an aspect of that comes into play as well. Some people go, well, what the pay for it? Oh, okay. Yes, I suppose not. It was such a big part of growing up in the 60s and 70s. That's amazing. But yeah, it's not authentic. I don't. He may it not be that at the end of World War II, the Americans have dropped 2 nuclear bombs and proven what total destruction they could wreak upon an enemy nation as they chose. And the Russians, who had been rebuilding their economy and their culture since 1918, worked on similar technology and invention of their bombs. And between the two of them, they were the two great economies in the world. At the end of World War II, Russia had also annexed a number of countries and without annexing, taken control of another sentence more. Middle part of the Warsaw Pact still had NATO, with the United States as state power, and the Warsaw Pact is after the USSR, the United Soviet Socialist Republics, as the two main power groups. And constantly they were making more atomic bombs and testing them to show that they could, and playing power games against each other. And the space race was part of that. So remember in 1969 when Vivian walked on the moon? I got to see that. I got to see so many great things in terms of space race. I remember living in Edmonton as a little shy girl, 4 years old, watching first dimension stuff. And then the Gemini got slow and watching them when they splash down and maybe go back to the heaven. I'm this little black and white TV because there was no color. And then in 1969, visiting my grandparents at Finland, watching moon landing, watching Neil Armstrong taking his one small step for man, and then going outside that evening and looking up at the moon. It can be different, but it was so exciting. Um, when the first man in space was Yuri Gagarin, he was a Russian. The Americans didn't get that yet. And the first woman in space was Valentina Tereshkova. The Americans didn't put a woman in space for another 20 years. But Valentina Tereshkova she had done, she was just an ordinary girl. She didn't come from any special family. She wasn't a military captain or anything. But she had done skydiving, so parachutist. And she was strong and loyal. Look, I thought she was beautiful. And after her time in space, she got married and had a child, and we never. So that was part of my experience being an engineer and becoming a woman with the power to shape my future. Was remembering that people do put barriers, and you often can't overcome by yourself. I think I told the story at the gathering as well, that in my physics class in second year, the physics professor wouldn't take questions, by which I mean, but he would ask for questions, and everyone would put their hand up, sometimes me too, and then he would ask. Sometimes only two people would put their hands up. One of them would be me. Yes, yeah. So some of the guys noticed this, and I'm not really confrontational all the time, so I hadn't been commenting on it. But they took me aside and said, he never takes your questions. And no, he's dragged down himself at this coincidence, but anyway. So they always sat behind me in class. We all had to go to the same places. Then they started making a point and saying, right behind their class. When I put my hand up, they would put their professor. And when the professor pointed at them and said, yes, your question, they said, I want to hear the answer to the question she's magnets. And that was totally simultaneously the most effective thing in terms of cleaning. That was more just. And the most heartwarming thing, because I knew I wasn't alone in this. And I think that's something when we're threatened and when we feel defensive and when we're breaking new ground, because when breaking new ground, you don't feel like you belong. But they made me feel like I belong. They were. I remember you making this weekly, you said, truly okay. Yes, we did that application that you bring up in the system you did. Yes, that's true. And part of that I think may have to do with the fact that they were fighting their battles too. And they also have that constant back of worry. Is it like, am I being strong and confident, or am I being ridiculously out of my zone in a place that I really don't belong? And they do women too, especially at university, who have their vision of what women's rights looks like. And even they say, he's honoring my comments of his wild so there was conflict, as well as sometimes they were just too busy or too engaged in their own fights, and I get that.
But sometimes actually it was a matter of who were they controlling?
The status quo with all of its assumptions and rules, or those people with their vision of how the world should be, but they didn't consult me about. Um, yeah, you should not be throwing off one set of chains just to get a different set.
Hashtag that.
And always, you know how when you point a finger, one finger points at the other person, and three of them are pointing back at you. So if you have a vision for how the world should be, you need to listen. But you need to listen to everyone else. You need to be willing to question yourself. And you need to be willing to adjust what you're doing. So if it made me to follow your own agenda and follow it in someone else's agenda, it was not getting it right.
Yeah, much like you're planting your garden. It's like you find your roots, you have this space where they're contributing and you're not evading and now overpowering everyone else of it. Now you're taking over.
Yes, exactly.
It's amazing. Wow, I just do so. When I see touch and I love what is in your thoughts today about how we are all fled to contribute, but if we all know we came from somewhere else, and this place we got a name here, so this place is a place for us to all contribute.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. To give back, um, give back, and to use. It's a huge part. We get wonderful opportunities, and we should take them, use them, enjoy them, be developed by them, but not cuff ourselves up on that. Because, so I'm thinking of the other story I told last time about how we used to live in a summer village during the summertime. Yeah, and I think I told that story to Canada. It says how much the world has changed. Yeah. We didn't consider ourselves no poor or dumb, but there was no running water in the cottage, but there was a village call just next cottage over. And there were no flush toilets, but there was a man with a horse and a wagon who came every morning to dump the buckets from the outhouses. And went up really early, used to cat the horse and maybe feed him a handful of grass. So, bonus, way better than living in the city. And how my sister and I could carry a bucket because he was so little and hang it on the top. And then she would jump and grab a potato and pull it down to me, and then we would work together. So that metaphor is really powerful. That I knew she was there to help. That this was something we could do together. And I was 4, she was 5, she was 4. We were sisters. But there's a bigger sisterhood. Oh, that's that Gaelic thing. It's not about a mindful. It's that bigger set, and everyone who depends on one another. You're part of that group. So I needed her to help her bucket of this. But also, I couldn't reach the handle. I couldn't jump that nothing. I needed somebody else who would bring things within my grasp. And then once we were in my grasp, we could work together. And it was easier for her, even though she couldn't do it as big a stroke as she had done by himself. But by working together and by that's teaching, waiting to give the knowledge you have to someone else and then help someone learn it. That makes the whole community stronger and that benefits you in the end. But that's not why you do it. You do it because it's current vehicle.
I've seen what you've done in particular Nah, oh, wow. I could sit here and on and up and on. Like, I love you sharing that one moment. And I know you wanted to share a story about the daughter and as well. Well, we all saying no when it was really mean, baby.
Do you want to hear it?
Yes, just maybe a little because I know she's part of you.
Very much, yeah. We have two daughters, and I'm tremendously proud of both of them. My elder daughter is a doctor, Stanley does. But when they were six, so when she was six, and then 3 years later, my sister was six, they started ballet classes. Big lots of, and these are kids. Um, they were going to a very high quality school that they didn't walk into. They would carry like vocational training when they hit their teens, which they did. And then Anne, my elder daughter, got a tiny injury. She was looking after a girl in church. A little girl in church went falling straight for the pastor while he was speaking. Anne crawled after her to laugh her. And there was a toothpick that had somehow gotten stuck in the carpet, so it was poking out. The doctor knew down on it, and a piece of wood went into her knee. And so, first of all, we did a long thing. I told him the toothpick out instead of putting it to it. It's just but I capped it, and the doctor looked at the injury, they looked at the tooth there, and there was no infection, and he said, okay, it's not. But, oh, they switched it. What? Then she began to show mysterious symptoms. So she had water in the knee, and she couldn't straighten. And we went to the sports medicine. Opened up the toothpick, and they looked at it and said, no, I think the toothpick isn't the cause of that's just coincidence. I think this is something. So we tracked down a bunch of self-illnesses. And then somebody said, finally, nothing is, we're not finding anything. Take them to the rheumatologist at Children's Hospital, which we did. And we met Dr. Clavin, they met them. And anyone who hears this who has not very good children with arthritis knows. She's awesome. She's just so good. She looked at Ellen's name. She said, and I know that's still her case of totally inside of the scene. But the best one, Ellen's knee has literal the size of a small arm. It was horrific. And her knee was pulled up like this. So she had to really stretch it to put a weight on the ground. And when she put weight on it, it hurt. So she started working with physiology clinic, the physiotherapists at Children's were also. So, and worked me up and then did a bunch of tests. He just, looked at it and told her all about the toothpick. And when the test said, we've got to control their symptoms with glands, most of them. She can move because we've got her physiotherapy crutches. She certainly wasn't dancing it. She wasn't even doing black belt testing taekwondo. She did training, so for years. But at least, it was under control, but nobody could tell. And the arthritis was still thick. So Dr. Nathan said, we're going to follow up this coincidence about the tooth. So they did laparoscopic surgery, found the nights that tiny little wolfies, different teeth surrounded the thigh. It was tissues that was the body from it. And this was triggered when he overlapped with the knee stones. But before that, on the crutches, in pain. Now they take it away from it. Taekwondo take it away from it. Summer camp time. And how do you send a love that walk to a summer camp with this hiking and archery and horseback riding? And I came down one morning. She had been up late, read the completely, and so her screensaver was on the computer. And she put together a picture of the Longitude tent. He was an old Canadian prima ballerina from back home. Doing a beautiful blue planche, so she's got her arms out very elegant and one leg is going straight up in the air and she's standing. And then the motto under it is from Psalm 31. Thou hast turned my mourning to dance. That through all that loss and pain, she was able to connect with our God who sustains. And she did go to camp. And somehow, only they know how, her cabin mates figured out how to get her onto a horse. So she was able to ride in with them. And I spoke to the organizers. They made an arrangement so that when they went out for the camping out on horseback expedition, and we'll spend one night with them and then go back, sleep in the cabin, to have a bit of rest, and then after they have this out, eventually with them. And then, of course, surgery to drag us out, the therapy suppressed the immune reaction. She was able to finish her grade 12 before 1 year and move on to university. And she's a doctor. Yeah, that is exactly. I only keep about like how fate to educating all this because it's just like money to guys. Yeah, yeah. I was raised in an ageless house, right? And even's a very small child. I had that hole that Saint Augustine talks about. That I mentioned the God-shaped space inside you. And I asked my mother, why don't we believe? And I don't remember what she answered. It didn't answer that question. And I had a childhood in a number of ways. I didn't fit it at school, and there were lots of days when I wished I could die. And that's not uncommon, unfortunately, um, even among small children, for them to get they unhappy, feeling these for them to look to death as a way out. Um, and one day, I was lying, unhappy, possibly I'd been crying. Something flashed against my face, and it felt like someone had been shown, and it was so comforting. There was no one there, but I knew that it was the touch of the Lord to give me that comfort. I was about 8 years old. So in some ways, this is Pavlov's wager. I had figured out that um, life can be very painful even for an 8-year-old. And there's two possibilities. Either God exists or God doesn't. And if there's no God and there's no sense and there's only the mechanical, chemical reactions of the world running mechanistically, then if I died, everything would stop and I'd empty fix it the way it was. Or there is a God. And life is worth it. And God can care for you and bring you into a future that's better present. And you can choose either one. Either one is better than living in misery, but I chose that. And that's consistent with, what God says this day is set before you, life and death. Therefore, choose life. And many years later, I learned that the motto of my family, back in Scotland, is personally, death or life. Choose one, choose one. Yeah. My daughters have kept growing up in a household that is deeply faithful. Husband is a believer. They were able to experience the Bible as one of the pieces of literature they ever heard, to live within a Christian community. And simultaneously, because in the course of my Christian calling, I've done a lot of studies, Bible studies, theological studies, theological lay people. And at, at the end of my first year at university, I actually bought a really cheap Bible at the bookstore because they were being sold off. They've been used as a textbook for religious studies course the year before, and I have to use it the next year. So I've gotten Oxford Study Edition. I mean, everything, study notes, the introductions, the analyses, they've all tucked in around it. So I've been able to take a fairly open-minded academic approach to teaching the Bible. And I think that's a mistake a lot of Christian parents make, is by simplifying the Bible. I hate Bible storybooks. Year Cam was born, UK, the American Bible Society came up with a set of Gospels, and they used the contemporary English version as test. They really took pictures in them. They gosh, the smaller book, so it's the best not out at all. But they used the actual Bible text in a very simple translation, appropriate for children. And those were my God sent, because this is the actual book subject. This isn't interpreted by someone who wants to simplify it for children. So when you simplify it, you are putting your own interpretation in it. You're simultaneously taking away and adding. So I have made a practice since they were born. When I was married, when I was putting the actual scriptures into my children's hands, and discussing them fearlessly. If there are questions, and one of the most fearless things a parent has to say, not just about the Bible, but about anything, is, I don't know. There's a saying becoming popular in some theological circles that doubt is not the opposite of faith. Doubt is essential for faith. It's certainty for faith. We can get comfortable with the questions, with not knowing, with letting God be the one who has the answers, and saying it's okay that I don't understand everything that God is doing, everything that inspired people of written the Bible. I'm just understand where I get something from. I think this questions. Nas namą jest wygnało dziwnego licytas. He affects Korea. That was today's truth. Yes, Sunny GM. Yes, it did. But probably not as much as just the EP. As I took it there. When Anne was born, the Canadian government gave us 6 months on unemployment for the 6 months is a horrible time to start taking the child to daycare. She would cry nonstop for hours, calm down just a little bit before I got there, and then cry because we were leaving the daycare. So 4 months, always the last thing every day I saw of my child, and the first thing I saw after work, was her wailing in misery. So it was hard, and I couldn't come early to work and go to the breakfast meetings that all the managers were really keen on that year. And I couldn't stay late, as I had to get to the daycare before it closed. And yet, yeah, so there's a lot of networking that you can't do at the application stage. On the other hand, everything has got to sense. So I did eventually become an engineering director, and I have a team working for me. Many of them were internationally educated graduates, and many of them were students. I had 3 POC positions, so a POC term runs 4 months. So every year from 2000 until 2015, so 16 years, I had 9 students a year that would intern in my group. And we would meet in on Monday morning to set the agenda for the week, and then meet on Friday afternoon to debrief and de-stress and relax and talk about more generic things that you have these deliverables and these product lines that you have to take care of. So I coached my former Communist Party of China employee through how to vote in the first election, because her first question was, "Tell me who I'm supposed to vote for." And fortunately, there were enough people from different perspectives in the group that we could really talk about how people decide to vote and what choices they make and what are the resources to look at different platforms. And then we could get into a bit of a political argument about, what the priorities and values should be. That kind of conversation is so valuable. And one of the things that I emphasized to my students, and there are probably business leaders out there who hate me for it, that you're paid to work 8 hours a day, or 8 hours a week. If you worked 10 hours a day, you're throwing in an extra 20 hours for free. That's about the extra 10 hours a day for free. So they're saying that work is not benefit. Because engineers paid salary by the month. Well, there's all over. Why would you talk because it's full time has no value? And that perspective is probably shaped by having to plug in 8 hours work and end it there. And we actually looked at the psychology. People who are doing any sort of creative work, yes, let's just 5 or 6 hours before their breaks or activity. 8 hours is actually more than is healthy or sustainable or valuable to the employer. But yeah, definitely the free overnight is not, should not be expected, and it's so harmful. So that's one of the things that came out of my not being able to compete with the boys on their own terms.
It forces me, I mean, after like having to drop her off every morning and keep crying to stop because you have to let me with it.
So we were blessed in so many ways. But the daycare that we found that worked for us in the end was run by Carmelite nuns from Hong Kong. And they were so kind and loving, faithful and sweet. And lots of them, parents who brought their kids off there were working retail jobs of some sort. So they didn't really get their according to the hours on their shift as opposed to the strict 8 to 5. So I was working there. So often Anne would be the last little girl picked up, and the nuns would take her into their residence, and she would read a book, cover that next to Sister Bernadette. They have pictures of her sitting on the bishop's lap while he's talking to the sisters. So it was like she had grandmas and aunties. And she got used to that, and it got to the point where I then walk her off, and she would with a volleyball play, and when I picked her up, she would have Sister Teresa or Sister Brit, and then this so yeah, it wasn't about it was awful for a while, and now the government gives you a year, and 1-year-olds are way more able to accept strangers than 6 months old. Yeah, that after age of 2, it's still doing the 6 months period.
I love his stories, but I know that you're not going to reading, you have to be at, and I do keep actually got you know because I
enjoy storytelling, so this is my
these days it is. Oh yeah, oh wow, I love stories too. I love listening to these. And yeah, Michelle, this is not going to be our last time, to share more of talking. And like I said, also we'll be contacting you regarding the drafts and the things we're working on. And yeah, so for today, I hope you really enjoyed our chat with Pamela today. If you have any questions, you can leave it in your comments. She'd be happy to answer it. Thank you, Pamela, for your time today. And thank you for all the knowledge and wisdom you shared today.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to me. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.
But your love won't give up.